flat screen plasma TV on Black Friday and you live in the Los Angeles area, you are out of luck because women are already camped out outside the Best Buy. They've been camped out since the 12th in order to get a television for $199. Just thought I'd share that with you just in case you're thinking that. But we have been talking about treasure and the idea of where your treasure is. Where your treasure is, that's where your heart is found to be also. And then in this verse, Jesus says that we can't serve God and wealth at the same time, that God demands our full attention, our loyalty, and our love. Talking about finance in the church, as we said, is never easy. Just bringing it up sometimes causes folks anxiety of different sorts, but we have to talk about it. It's a spiritual condition. It is about our heart and our loyalty. And Jesus has no problem talking about money. In fact, we said that out of the 38 parables, 16 of them concern possessions or money. And so Jesus makes it clear that as we consider these things, it's a spiritual issue. We think sometimes that where our heart is, we would like it to be that way, where our heart is, then the money or our treasure should follow. But Jesus flips that around and say, take a good look. Take a good look at where you are investing your time, your attention, your money, your focus. That's where your heart is. The truth is, those places that we invest in become our treasure, whether we want them to or not. We sort of explored this topic last week, the problem with two masters or more than one master. We said that sometimes we can see money or possessions as a substitute or false substitute for these things in our life. We said that sometimes we see money as security. So the more money we have, even if you have a lot or a little, sometimes we can have a wrong relationship with money and things because we associate it with security. We also said that sometimes we're wired in such a way that we associate money with power. And that is, the more money I have, the more I feel empowered. And again, it doesn't really have to do with what's actually in your bottom line of your bank account. It's just your attitude. It's your attitude with money. And then we said, well, some folks see it as freedom. Money is a way to have freedom or to not have freedom. And last one is money as a substitute for love. So those can be our masters: security, power, freedom, or a substitute for love. And I'm sure we could think about it in other ways, but we're looking at it through that lens. Yesterday, I was having a life conversation with my life partner, with Jim. Sometimes we actually are in the same room together at the same time, even though we're both clergy and very busy. And in both of our churches, we're speaking on the theme of stewardship and money this month. And so we were comparing notes, but also talking about life. And we were recalling just the changes in our own life. And I've shared a little bit about this. We had financial struggles very much as a young couple. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks, I think, if you remember that story. We also, there was a Christmas where we asked for canned goods because we were struggling so much. And so we were talking about, well, here we are now, and we're sitting in this apartment and enjoying this place here, and things have changed a lot. And I wonder how that changes our message. Does it make it more difficult to talk about money or easier? How do those experiences change the way we talk about money? And the truth is, in some ways, it doesn't change it at all. It's an attitude, right? And so we're going to look a little bit more. For us, we found it was about security. Money for us sometimes, in the times when we didn't have much of it and in the times when we do, it's still sometimes we're attached to it as a way of security. And I imagine that is true, not just for us, but probably true for us as a church and true for individuals in this room. So we're going to look at that about our relationship with money as related to security. This passage was from Matthew, but Jesus also, in a parallel gospel, and Luke also uses this phrase of treasure. His words are recorded there. And so I'm going to share a little bit of this passage from Luke. Jesus is talking with his disciples and says, I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat, about your body, what you will wear, for life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They don't sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, and yet God somehow feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider the wild flowers, how they grow. They don't labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in his splendor was dressed as one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass in the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will God clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan runs after such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, as we sang, seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Don't be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions, give to the poor, provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. May God give us understanding these words of Jesus as they're recorded in Luke. There seems to be something related here in terms of security as related to generosity. That is, the more we feel insecure, the more that we hold on, the less able we are to be generous with things that we have. And yet, in this scripture, Jesus says, God has given us this, nothing less than the whole kingdom. Our God, God's very nature is to be generous. And so it is for us that we are meant to reflect God's generosity and who we are. So how do we let go of our need for security so that we can be more generous? This passage starts about worrying, right? Worrying about things, feeling insecure. And there's so many songs that go with this. And it's funny because they're all beachy songs. They're all songs that you would sing if you know, the Bobby McFerrin one, Don't Worry, Be Happy. Don't worry, be happy. And then Boys, Don't Worry, Baby. I won't sing it for you. Don't worry. And then there's one, Bob Marley, right? Don't worry about a thing. Everything's just going to be all right. I could just keep singing up here, but I won't. All these songs, though, they're mostly beachy songs. They remind me of, like, when you're laying on the beach or something, or by the poolside, and you really don't have any worries. Your worry is whether, there's too much sun out or not. But in life, we do have real worries, and they really are finances. We have bills that we have to pay. We have to save up for retirement. We might have responsibilities to our children or other. There are some real things sometimes that do make us worry and do make us insecure. And to the extent that we feel insecure, we hold on to these things much, much tighter. It's kind of like living your life. I think of the card game Rummy. Have you ever played Rummy? This is the one where you pick up cards and you put cards down, and you're trying to collect 3 of a kind or 4 of a kind, all the same suit. And so you can pick up as many cards as you want. And the trick in the game is you can pick up as many cards as you want, and you might have several possibilities for putting 3 of a kind down. But if the person you're playing with goes out and you're stuck with all these cards, and you lose points. And we can play life that way sometimes, right? We think, oh, I'll save up, and we never put any down. And, well, you get the point. We get the point. There's nothing, we think, well, maybe there's not enough left for me. And so sometimes the problem of insecurity and holding on to our possessions has to do with the fact that we feel like there's not enough, that there's not enough. So how do we turn this around? How do we be more generous with our time, our money, and our possessions and our property? Well, in relationship to our possessions, I think about, have you ever seen this show on television? I don't know if it's still on, called Extreme Couponing. You ever seen this? People collect coupons and coupons, and then they try to get as much groceries as possible for a low amount of money or for free. And in this show, Extreme Couponing, people take it to the extent where they have so much free stuff that they don't even need. It's more of a game than anything to see how much free stuff you can get, that some people have actually built sheds in their backyard to hold all the stuff that they've gotten from the extreme couponing. And I think about this as a way of like, wow, it's like hoarding all these possessions for no reason, really, right? Just for having them, for the point of having them, to the point where nobody is getting to use them. They're sitting in a shed. It's more of a game than anything. And what's the point of that? What is the point of hoarding so much? How's that connected to security? And how can we be more free with it? Time is another thing. It's not money, but they say money is time, and sometimes that's true. If you're a person who spends a lot of your time or is very generous with your time, this part of the message might not be for you. I'm not saying add more giving of your time. However, I get a little stingy with my time sometimes. I'm known to do that. And not only time with others, but time that ultimately belongs to God. And so there's a way where you can be stingy with your time, even as it relates to God. Where should we spend more time in quiet? Where should we spend more time in worship? Where should we spend more time in reflection and meditation? If all of our possessions and all of our time and all of our money belongs to God, then again, how are we opening up space for God to really own and use those things? How do we become more generous? The last example is property. Being stingy or being insecure with property, to the point where it's not used for anyone, just like that shed full of goods. We can be stingy with property too. I see this in an example back in Oakmont. Oh, poor Oakmont, telling another bad story about Oakmont. But back in this town that I lived in, there was a story, just as a legend of the town, that there used to be a swimming pool in that town. Now, the area where the swimming pool used to be was a parking lot. But a parking lot that there weren't any businesses around. So it was a parking lot really not used for anything. But the legend is there used to be a beautiful swimming pool there. But in the time when, during the civil rights movement, and there was finally a move for integration, the pool at the time was for only the white people of the town. And so during the civil rights movement, when things began to be more integrated and when it became clear to the people in the town that they were going to have to share the pool with people of color and other races, rather than doing that, they voted to completely shut down the pool and pave it over. And that's why you will not find a trace of that swimming pool in that town anymore. Instead, in a place where there used to be refreshment and enjoyment and fellowship and kids laughing, instead, rather than sharing that town decided to just completely close it down. And why? Because of insecurity, because of fear, because of possessiveness. That's not us. We're created to be generous, just as God is generous. And it's a gift. It doesn't come naturally. It's a gift that we are to pray for and to be willing to have. And it comes through this, recognizing that anything we have, our time, our possessions, our property, everything ultimately really does belong to us by the grace of God, and therefore is God's. And that we, as servants, only serving one master, are things we are to share them freely, as God calls us to do. How does it feel when somebody's generous to you? How does it feel when somebody doesn't give you just what you need, but more than what you need? It feels amazing, doesn't it? It does feel amazing. What inspires you to give or to share your things? How do you contemplate and decide? How do you make the decisions on how to spend your time, your money, your property, your possessions? How can we as a church be very thoughtful about this? In many ways, we are generous. We are generous with our time to our community and opening up our building. How does God mean for us to shower even more, to be abundant and generous with the things that we have been so graciously given? Amen.